how I'm patching the vent. As you can see, hole comes out here at the base. So when I drop this down, none of this is seen. I put 2-inch, remember this is screwed to 2-inch stock, so that's pretty much in line with that. Pretty easy, we don't see it. Nice and clean on the outside. Okay, so I'm just laying this down and I'm setting my pieces in. You can see that's all they do. They just sit in there. Then made myself a story stick. You see the divisions in the line? Divided that with a set of dividers. I just set that on there, referencing off the bottom, line it up to the top, and screw that in. Remember, we have a 2x2, and we have a 2-inch thick frame using 2-inch screws. That's really the best way to connect these because there's only one pin. Everything can expand and shrink, and nothing's going to split. Okay. So I'm pretty happy. It's like, this is rock solid. So that's how I attach that. Now I'll have to put a little small ceiling in there because I don't want the major heat entering up into the higher portions and then have to come down before it can escape. We want to baffle it so that it goes right out at the vent. Okay, I'm ready to shingle this, and we start with the paper. Now I got a lot of questions. Mostly off of TikTok, but on IG too. Where's your building wrap, Mr. Forsberg? You don't have any building wrap. That's, that's really poor quality. And obviously, when they don't see building wrap right after the framing, they assume that, you don't have any envelope design. So we're using tar paper, and we're not using a rain wall, an air space behind the siding. Siding is going to be the weatherproofing, not the stuff underneath the siding. Now, granted that there could be problems with water in behind the sheathing, well, we're not going to have that because we're not going to use caulking. Oh my God, Jack, this sounds like a disaster. Well, let's just start with this and let me show you how I do it and understanding the properties. Okay, I personally think aspenite's better than plywood. And perhaps the reason is plywood is no longer made with even plies. It only comes in proper alternating plies in 3/8, 5/8. In 1/2 inch, it's got 2 layers in the right direction, and 3/4 is just 2 pieces of 3/8 glued together. So I don't like plywood anymore. It delaminates, works like crazy, and doesn't hold a nail as well as aspenite. The only issues I get from people with plywood are, well, geez, Jack, that stuff gets water. But once again, that ain't the substrate problem. That's you can't keep a building dry. And this building over here hasn't got 1 stitch of caulking in it or water. I'll show you how it's dealing. And that was done in 2006. Original paint. Okay, so here's the base. Folded corners. And once again, we're weaving the corners on the shingle, and I'll apply tar paper only on the corners, whereas in this, I also added it to the coursing, but that was because my lines aren't vertical. There is no pattern on this shingle. Well, I shouldn't say. The pattern on this shingle is square butt. What I mean by that is I process these shingles to be perfectly 90 and clean cut across the bottom. That in itself is a pattern, but it's a random pattern with a 5-inch course. There's going to be one little banding area, and that's the pattern. So all of those are vertical. Now, you see there is a bit of airspace, and that will crinkle and stuff like that and leave a little bit of air behind the shingle. In areas where I think it might get behind here, I'll add an ice shield to the aspenite. But in most cases, you don't need that. That's plenty. Okay? Like maybe where a side wall would come in, I'd add ice shield. But I'd make sure that ice shield came out at a layer because we lap every 3 feet, right? And instead of running the whole wall and coming out the bottom, I want it to come out as quick as possible. That's why I use this technique. Thanks for watching. Okay, here I've laid out the lapping. It's a 5-inch exposure. And what we're doing here is we are shingling that tower. But the real base of that tower is already on the roof, and it's another 60 inches. And generally, you start at the bottom with shingle and you go up. So we're going to have a pattern already in place, and we're going to have to do, we're going to have to meet up with this pattern. And so what we need are canting strips. And that's what these are. Just a slight bevel on them. I eyed it, it was 5 degrees. And that's going to replace that little section right there. And why is that? Because we're going to start a course without shingle in place. And so, if you follow me, I'm going to nail this in place. It will remove when we get up here, and my first course in the tower of what we work off is going to be that. So I'll start them about there. When we get up to that portion from the base of the roof, we'll just slide, because it'll be lifted, we'll just slide our shingle up and finish it off. Now, how that's normally done is you hold this last course down a little bit, you nail right there and there at a 45-degree angle into the wall, and as you pound it up into location, those nails draw up underneath the last row of shingle. Anyway, starts with canting strips so that we can do weaved corners without busting our corners when we start at the base of the roof and come up underneath. Okay, so we got our 4 weaved corners, right? And so those won't bust out when we go to slide in our other weaved corners. The nail high, as remember, we got to slide up. And notice that I've got this canting strip low enough that I have access to the nails. So we can pull that out and just pull this out, okay? So that is how you start mid-course if you have to. It's not impossible, is it? Okay, so on my weaved corners, we're going to put a little piece of felt in every course to waterproof that joint right there. But we'll still do alternating connections, right? And I use that on roofs. You saw me use it on this. That's right. You saw me use it on this. And the reason is that's a sloped wall. It's not a vertical wall. You don't really need it on vertical corners, although with today's shingle, I would do it anyway. So it doesn't add a lot of more work, but it adds a lot to what are potentially the spots that are the weakest in the siding envelope. Thanks for watching. So I have a bunch of shingle painted that I'm sorting through. Once again, always coating every surface, both front and back, as the first coat. I'll then, once that's done, give the final coat to the whole surface, right? Incredible amount of longevity on paint finishes and solid stain, which is what this is. And so it's looking pretty crisp. It's a 5-inch exposure. I'll probably put a triple band in this area, possibly, as something to sort of come here, and then from this location diminish the exposure so that it reads with the roof. Roof is unfinished, remember, going gray. The orange is clay brick in color to represent a smokestack. Anyway, I think it's going to look exciting. Okay, so now it's time to draw the tar paper out to the front. So it's overlapping and coming across that first course. Notice how I installed these while I was constructing so that can lap there. Even these corners will slide up underneath. We'll always have lapping. Okay, I don't think tar paper is actually hard to work with at all. It's actually much easier to work with and in my opinion, far better. So that's how I do it. I'll get that started and we'll do our next course. That draws the moisture out, and any water that could get in there has to come out every 3 feet. It doesn't run the whole wall and come out the bottom. To me, that's just, why don't you wet everything? Okay. I really want to thank all those that asked questions and engaged in the conversation during this build of the tower. And it's coming to a conclusion. And I thought I'd just go over its general concept for anybody that maybe came in recently. So it really started with just some very simple pencil sketches, and that's it within the building. Some details, things that maybe were going to be done that didn't get done. But generally these are the drawings, and that is what they produced. Now, the tower itself is approximately to the very tip of that finial, 32 feet off the ground, which isn't really tall, but for a 2-foot square, that's pretty tall. Well, I wouldn't say I'm a steeplejack, but I could put that on. Keith, Shipwright Skills, sorry, I'll tag him. Mitchell, I think's his last name. Found an Eric Sloan book that showed tightening courses as they raise, and I thought, oh wow, this is great. So I'll tag him in here. That's his influence. After he commented on this and back channeled me some pictures. But here we go. I think I really love the orange. The orange is to represent brick. It is complementary to the burgundy, the wine, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, I'd be curious what anybody says. So this grill will sit on top of that, and this will sit on top of that. There's still one more piece of crown molding, and there is still a piece of copper flashing to put here. That's the copper there. It's a good 16th inch thick. We'll solder it together. But I am almost ready to call the crane and have this set up permanently. So let me come show you some stuff up close. So we packed out the crowns, and I think that now they make sense, right? See, now the lines and the crown, it doesn't look so beefy anymore, right? It was really punched out because I anticipated the thickness. And I really like the tightening of the coursing. It's going to just be fabulous against this. Now this is left weathered. That'll be weathered. And so I still have just a few things left to do, but pretty excited. And I think Nick is going to really love the natural convection to get the heat out. At that height, we should get an excellent chimney effect. So thanks for watching, and please comment. I'm curious as to what you think of the proportions and the concept without drawings, a building with just sketches. I rarely do it, but this time I think it turned out successful. Once again, thanks for all that followed along. It's really made it pleasurable for me.